when you have these indexes, whether it's, the top 10 cities in the world to live or the best countries in the world to start a business, whatever, all these indexes that we come up, they have to have a criteria, and you've got to set the criteria first. Otherwise, it's a meaningless list. You could be living like next to a spa or something, or next to a health foods outlet or whatever, and you can be a deeply unhappy and unhealthy person. You could be, living in the country that seems absolutely ideal for flourishing, but you yourself are in an unwell state. And so it's actually quite a deep question.
And we are going to answer those questions and much more in today's conversation. That is Nina Butler, founder of InRetreat.co. She runs transformative journeys in exceptional eco destinations around the world, and she's traveled personally, extensively all over the world. We've had her on the pod before. She brings such clarity to these topics, and you can hear there how she takes these lists seriously. And what she said is she realized this is also doubling as a list of the best places in the world to live. So not only is this episode going to give you a crazy amount of travel recommendations, some destinations to check out, to see in the future, but also it's going to help you think a little bit about what health and wellness might mean to you right now. And perhaps some of the questions that we bring up might impact your immediate life, even if you're not traveling anywhere anytime soon. So I think you're going to love this one, and we're going to dive in right now. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. So excited for this one. You bring these listicle type episodes, and it's much different, I think, at least on this show, I feel, than reading some kind of list online, a top 10 health and wellness destinations or whatever. You just kind of skim through it. Oh, that's cool. This is a much deeper conversation around health and wellness, the criteria, what you might want to consider in terms of not only a place you may want to live or travel to, but also where you're at right now. And there's one question that Nina shares at the top as a part of this framework she created to come up with this list that I think is a powerful question that anybody can use, no matter if you're a traveler or not. So there's a lot going on in this conversation, is my point. You'll also hear me struggling to chew on something in the beginning of this episode. You'll hear what that's all about. Be sure to check out Nina's work over at InRetreat.co. We'll link up to that in the show notes. She's awesome. I'm glad to call her a friend. We got to do this one in person, and so I think you're going to love it. And don't forget, before we dive in, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, zerototravel.com/newsletter. I say our newsletter, but it's my newsletter, I guess. I'm the one that writes it, and I send it out once a week, and it's free. So be sure to sign up over there. Now, let's slip and slide into this episode, and I will see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers. Here we are. Welcome back to the Zero to Travel podcast, Nina Butler.
Thank you, Jason.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
InRetreat.co, of course, your website, retreats that inspire wonder. And I could think of no better person to bring us a list of the top 10 health and wellness destinations than you, because you've been all over the world, personally and professionally. And you've also combined that with health and wellness.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of places, right? I mean,
yeah, travel has been my life since I finished school. So yeah, a deep passion.
If you want to hear the full story, we can link up to the last interview we did. And we're doing this in person. You were kind enough to trek up to my humble abode. And so we're here. We've got, if you hear the last one, you'll hear like some sirens and crazy cityscape stuff going on. Here, it's just going to be nice and quiet.
Yeah, in the Norwegian forest.
Which is apropos, considering this is a health and wellness. So we're like serenity now.
Absolutely.
Yet we have pastries that I bought in front. I thought, this is going to be a nice touch for the podcast.
It's all about the balance.
Let's balance it out with some pastries. You like the Norwegian pastries? Are you a fan?
They're good. I wouldn't say Norway is a culinary destination. I know there are some Norwegian restaurants that
harsh words.
Yeah, on the west coast that have become, I think particularly there's one in Stavanger, has become quite famous. But in general, I wouldn't, put Norway at the top of my list for culinary delights.
Yeah.
But definitely in Oslo, there are some lovely pastry shops.
Yeah. Well, you shocked me when you came in because you gave me such a thoughtful gift. Speaking of culinary stuff, since we're on that, before we get into some of these destinations, you gave me this bag of chili bites from South Africa.
Yeah, called biltong.
Tell me about biltong.
So biltong...
We'll have to take a picture of this, like holding it. We'll
Yes.
post it up with the show notes so you can see on Zero to Travel. But
So biltong is, I would say, a national obsession in South Africa. And when South Africans live elsewhere, when they leave South Africa or spend a while outside of the country, it's probably one of the top things that they crave and miss alongside rooibos tea. This is beef biltong, but you get other wild meats. I mean, I think kudu and wildebeest. There's other types of biltong that are also very popular, but basically it's what an American would call jerky. It's dried meat, but it's dried with particular spices. There's a lot of Malay influence on the west coast of South Africa around Cape Town historically, as well as a large Indian population, Gujarati heritage population on the east coast. And so South Africa has quite a lot of spices in its food, and biltong is got spices and herbs, and it's dried meat. Now, I'm actually a vegetarian, but I do know, and my husband is a lover of biltong, and I do know that South Africans absolutely adore it. And we have one pack left from our recent trip to South Africa, and I thought I'd bring it for you to sample.
you are very kind. There's no more thoughtful gift in many ways from one traveler to another than to bring something, as we know, something else in the luggage. That's a big deal to go somewhere far away, to bring something back and carry it all the way to somebody. So that was very nice. I'm actually gonna cut this open right now.
Right.
We're gonna have the first ever taste of biltong.
You'll have South Africans
scissors.
listening, salivating from all over.
And you know what? This isn't a small pack either. It's 250 grams. So
You better like it.
yeah, I better like it, or Chris is gonna kill me. All right. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna be chewing on this for the remainder of the podcast. Oh man, hold on. Oh, that's hard. Okay, you can't just bite in.
You do get some styles of biltong that are more wet and soft, but these are definitely chewing ones.
But is that part of the allure of biltong?
Yeah,
it's kind
you
of passing
sit
time.
exactly.
You're kind of looking at nature and chewing on the thing.
Exactly. Ultimate snack with a beer, watching the sunset, or also great, very useful to take on hikes or wilderness adventures, obviously, because it's cured.
Spicy too.
Yes,
Very
these are
good.
chili. Yeah.
I quite enjoy it.
Good.
I like the spice.
Good. Well, you've got 250 grams to get through.
Thank you. It would take several beers to get through one small stick of it, but thank you. Very thoughtful.
Of course.
Man, that is spicy. Okay. Got it. Chili bites. I love it. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm afraid now I'm going to have to ask some questions because otherwise you're going to hear me chewing this for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to stick it in the corner of my mouth. All right, and then we'll have a bite of my pastry to wash it down. We were talking as you came up on the subway and we got here, and we're driving up, and you were saying, "Oh, this was actually pretty timely for you in your life to put together this list." I think that's an important framing as a way to start this, because what does a health and wellness destination even mean?
Yeah.
And of course it's going to be subjective, but being that you do retreats and yoga retreats and you are in the health and wellness space and have been for many years personally and professionally, and you've been around the world. So that's why I wanted to tap you for this. But why is this timely for you?
Yeah.
And what kind of boxes do you have to check to be considered a health and wellness destination?
Yeah. So I realized that I needed to, before just coming up with this list, I needed to answer two questions. One is, what are we talking about when we say wellness? Like, healthy lifestyle, wellness. Like, what are we talking about? Defining that.
Because it can sound like a generic media term. It's like,
well,
health
it
and
is,
wellness,
unfortunately. Wellness it's one of those very bland words that are completely overtraded. And so you do have to define for yourself what it means. And then the other question is, okay, so once you've defined your word wellness, what is the criteria by which you are ranked? It's not that I've got a list of 1 to 10 and it's ranked, but what is the criteria by which you're choosing these 10 destinations? And this, of course, will become a very famous index. No,
chewing
that's
the fat
fine,
for.
That's fine.
I shouldn't have taken a bite of that during the podcast. Okay, please.
Of course, this is going to become a famous index of, health and wellness destinations. And when you have these indexes, whether it's, the top 10 cities in the world to live or the best countries in the world to start a business, whatever, all these indexes that we come up, they have to have a criteria, and you've got to set the criteria first. Otherwise, it's a meaningless list. So those were the two things that I started thinking about. And actually, when I was thinking about them, I realized that this list is really a list of the best places to live. Because, all the things that constitute wellness are things that you really want to be part of your life, right? And so what does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to have wellness as part of your life? And I think that there are superficial answers to that, but those are not nearly as interesting. And the reason why I say that is because you could be living like next to a spa or something, or next to a health foods outlet or whatever, and you can be a deeply unhappy and unhealthy person. You could be, living in the country that seems absolutely ideal for flourishing, but you yourself are in an unwell state. And so it's actually quite a deep question. It is related to the physical, the superficial, the contextual, but it's also to the state that you're in at that time. And so in some way they have to speak to each other. And then when you're setting the criteria, it's kind of like, well, what are the things that help you flourish? Yes, on a superficial level, physical level, getting around, unpolluted, whatever, but also help you flourish in a deeper level, because well-being, wellness is not just, it's not just physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds perfect. the way you've kind of defined it and laid it out. And
I do have the exact list of criteria, though, that I can read
of course
off.
You do.
Yeah.
You're good at this. You need to start a podcast. I'm just going to give you hosting duties right now. Okay. I just wanted to pull out something you were talking about, setting your own criteria. And I think this is an important point, because if you are looking to move abroad next year or take an extended trip or whatever, you're listening to this, I think it's a worthwhile way to spend your time is to list out what are kind of the boxes you want to check. You might not be able to check them. I remember we did this when we moved here. It was like, well, what do we want? Well, it'd be nice to be near nature, to be, a place where we can open the door and our kids can just run out and there's no traffic and all these things. And it was, just having to lay that out really helped narrow the decision down of where we were even going to look. And I'm just using that as a real world example that's not travel based. But travel or otherwise, it is very nice to sit down in like a coffee shop or something with a piece of paper and just spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes thinking, what do I really want out of this?
Yeah,
what do I travel, trip, whatever? What are some of the criteria? That
ultimately, it helps you understand yourself better, because what you're really saying is, what are my priorities?
Yeah, and those change. So that's why it's important to do this exercise.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to think of yourself as the same person you were 6 months ago. some things aren't going to change dramatically, but sometimes they do.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
My life has changed a lot in the last 6 months personally. So, yeah, you know, you never know.
Yeah,
criteria,
absolutely.
priorities change.
Yeah.
Do you want to share your?
Yeah. So the criteria that I came up with was clean air and clean water. No acute or immediate conflict. And I must say that, you know, that's, I think, whether it's in the place or neighboring, because no matter how perfect an environment is, if it's unstable politically, you're not going to be in a well space. Then access to regional, seasonal produce year round. So balanced nutrients that didn't have to be flown in from halfway across the world.
Okay. Yeah, you don't get that in Norway.
Yeah, pretty much that's Norway off the list. Done. It was doing well up to that point, but yeah.
I feel guilty eating avocados sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I had one yesterday.
Avocados so good, and my wife's like, well, we should probably stop eating, you know, they're so far away. I'm just like, I know, but they're avocados, you know? It's just,
Yeah.
We shouldn't really have avocados here in Norway. Really.
No. But then in winter, if you didn't, what would you be eating? Fish.
Cold air.
Yeah, exactly. Dried fish. The biltong would last.
Yeah, that's going to last a while. Love it.
Okay. Then access to protected, unpolluted wilderness nature, and free, you know, or at least accessible to the majority of people. So not a high bar of entry in order to be in those wilderness spaces. So it can be part of everyday life. Then community connection support. So a place that has that is culturally or socially engaged in healthy or wellness related activities, right? So if you're the only person who's interested in hiking or canoeing in the whole community, is that then, you know, a conducive wellness destination? I would say probably no. Doesn't mean that you can't have well-being living there, but I would say that it wouldn't be one of the top destinations. There's something about community also that feeds us and that helps us flourish as people. And then not spoiled by tourism or overtraded or over-commercialized.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is a big one, yeah, because some of the...
Well, it's hard because those types of places that you're describing are often the most popular.
Exactly. But there's a trade-off when tourism gets over the top. And so, it was very interesting when I added that as a criteria of what that does, because some of the most famous wellness destinations are now that. They are now overtraded and over-touristy.
Right.
The last one is not highly urbanized or high density of population, because that feeds to the first one, which is the clean air, unpolluted, clean environment. And those two kind of play into one another. There's also something, I think, you know, all indices of health and healthy lifestyles show that highly urbanized areas, there's a big dip in overall health in people.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Great criteria. This is sort of a tangent, and I don't, you know, we all don't need to like bring up the pandemic all the time because we're past that. But it was a reset for some of these destinations. I'm thinking like Hawaii specifically, and some of these places where they're like, okay, when you mentioned the tourism, they're like, we do want the tourists to come back, but maybe we need to rethink this a little bit more instead of it just being this free-for-all type of situation. So it was interesting you added that. Noticeably absent on your list that I wanted to bring up was affordability.
That's a good point. I didn't make that as a criteria, but I did, in thinking around that, none of the criteria or my thinking in the destinations was anything to do with spas or kind of high end, because wellness industry is a big industry, right? And so none of these destinations are related to any kind of 5-star Swiss spa.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And that's not the side of the industry that I'm interested in.
Right.
And that's not what this list is answering. I'm not like listing the top 10 spas in the world, which are ultimately going to be, you know, Four Seasons hotels or whatever. You know, they're going to be prohibitively expensive. And that side of the industry is very exclusive. And that goes back to the point of defining what wellness is. Wellness is not being able to get a 90-minute massage from 4 people every day.
Right.
It's deeper than that. It's more about your everyday conditions. It's about, all of the factors in your life that allow you to flourish. And have space to flourish and have a good balance of things. And that is not defined by your income to a point. But then ultimately, and this maybe goes to the point of both the criteria of highly urban and the criteria of immediate or acute conflict or political unrest, is all of these things are, to a point. Because, of course, it would be completely naive and incorrect to say that, the poorest areas of the world, you can have great well-being living there. No. I mean, that's just not true. There is always, I think, when you talk about wellness, there's a certain sort of economic level in which people can be healthy and flourish. And if you are below that, and unfortunately in the world, a vast majority of people are, it's just not a healthy life. And that's one of the big problems that we face as a human race, is so many people don't have access to these things that I listed.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Because I knew that in my head that's what this list was, but we didn't actually explain it to listeners. I think it was important that you lay that out, because when you do hear health and wellness, you do go to the media narrative of, like, you start seeing the images of the spas and the things, and that's not what we're talking about today. And I knew that in my head, but I should have explained it so thanks for doing that. Exactly what you said is what we're talking about. We're not talking about top 10 spas around the world. Yeah. Anything else before we get into the list that you want to share?
No, I think, and one more thing I do want to say is my list it will not be perfect. And I would love to hear from people if you're listening to this and I've laid out the criteria, and as we're talking, you're like, hold on, that area in my country or whatever really fits that, and I didn't know that or didn't. I would love to hear from people, because I'm sure that there will be areas that are left off that didn't make the 10. And I think that's super interesting. I'd love to hear from them.
Are these all destinations you've been to, or that some of them are on your wish list and that you just know about from being in the industry?
Yeah, almost all I've been to, but there are 2 that I haven't, and I know from the industry. Yes.
Interesting.
And one I think you can help me with.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Because you will probably know about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Piqued my interest. My interest was already piqued. This is why we're recording the podcast as I chat on a pastry. All right. Are you rank these?
No, they're not ranked. They are just the list of 10. You cannot rank them. That would be so impossible.
Well, we're still going to. How do you want to do it? You want to go 10 to 1 or?
It doesn't matter, because it's a flat structure.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Whether
enough. 10 or
I should have made
5.
you rank them. That was my mistake. Next time you're ranking them.
Did you want a countdown?
Yes. We love a countdown here on the Zero to Travel podcast.
Sorry.
But now you have to rank them in real time. No, it's okay. We'll forgive you. All right. Go ahead. You want to kick it off.
Okay. So my list started with actually a place I know very well. And that is the Western Cape of South Africa.
Going home for this one, huh?
Yeah. It meets all the criteria. I think there's obviously one city in that area, which is Cape Town. The center of Cape Town, it's an urban center, concrete center. So I'm not necessarily talking about right in the center. And there are areas of the Western Cape where there are people, like high unemployment and people who are living in not very conducive to wellness areas. But I would say that in terms of suburbs around Cape Town and into wilderness areas, it's an incredible wellness destination. There's a lot of protected wilderness, year-round amazing produce. A lot of the stuff actually you buy in Norwegian supermarkets comes from there. Certainly the citrus at certain times of year. But yeah, so amazing agricultural production, great weather, clean air, very high standard of clean water. And I think people who, there's a strong culture of loving the outdoors, and people are really active. Also, South Africans are incredibly friendly and welcoming, a strong sense of community, strong family bonds. And I think definitely not spoiled by tourism. But all of that is, I guess, yet. There are little pockets, maybe around Franschhoek, that's starting to get overtraded, but that's one town in the whole area. And I would say for the most part, an ideal wellness destination. It's lots of, if you want wellness practices, lots of yoga studios, lots of meditation, lots of retreat centers as well.
And so forgive me because geographically I'm not super familiar, but Cape Town, you're talking about down.
So Cape Town is so the Western
around?
Cape is the province, and thank you for asking that because it's like should have clarified. So Western Cape is the province, so like the county or the state in which Cape Town is the capital. Yeah, and Cape Town is actually a relatively small city as global cities go, but it does have an urban downtown, right? And so I'm not talking about that, and that's why I said the Western Cape. There are specific areas that maybe meet these criteria more than other, but there are several areas, several small towns, and you can be well connected. If you're also in like nature reserves there's lots of ways in which people buy into nature reserves, and you can have a small plot in a nature reserve, which is like maybe an hour drive from a center, and a lot of people choosing to live that way.
Wow. Okay, so it sounds like I've heard so many wonderful things about that area of the world and have yet to visit, and it just comes up so much over the years from travelers, and
and year round good produce from there, year round access to nature. Good,
love it.
Good life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great way to kick it off.
Woo! And then staying in the south, the next one I would bring up is New Zealand. So 2 areas, one around Taupo in the center of the North Island, and Wanaka in sort of southwest of the South Island.
Top off your coffee here while we chat.
Thank you.
Warm me up a little bit.
Yeah.
There you go.
So New Zealand is obviously very low in general across the country, low density of population, lots of wilderness areas, and a lot of access to nature, protected wilderness areas, clean air, clean water, great community. And I would say Taupo in particular has got a lot, like Wanaka, has got a strong focus on, I want to say, adventure activities, but in an accessible way. So not like necessarily, I'm not talking about like Red Bull vibes here. That's more kind of Queenstown. So that's also why I didn't include Queenstown. That's kind of and much more touristy kind of capital of like, gnarly adrenaline. Exactly. So that's not these are sort of slower vibes, slower living centers in New Zealand.
Okay. Well, I don't feel like we closed the loop as we're into the list now, why this is so timely for you personally.
Yeah. So
because this list is well thought out because
Chris and I, my husband and I, have been living in Norway for just over 2 years, and we're not 100% settled. Norway's not been an easy place for us to sort of find a sense of belonging and to feel settled and to make community. And winters are particularly harsh, so we are currently starting to think about moving, or at least exploring whether we should be. I actually spoke to my parents about this over the Christmas period, and they were the ones who told me make a list, which is what you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, like how they were like, make a list of your criteria, make a list of what you want for your life, and then look at a world map and see the places that meet that with open eyes, whether you've been there or not, and then you need to go to those places and visit them and find out for yourself.
So this list is not just a list.
It's
we're
amazing.
Sharing. This is your own personal list.
It's my
of
own
places
personal list.
you might want to move.
I did try and like remove my be a bit more objective, but it is amazing. They call it like synchronicity. How when you said, "Hey, do you want to do this podcast? This is the topic I'm thinking," and it was at the same time where I needed to make a list. Perfect, yeah,
perfect timing.
Exactly.
Well, I love that because that means there's even more heart and soul into this list.
For sure,
these are places you're considering.
Yeah, definitely. So. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Give us another one.
Another one. So the first few are in the global south. So as you're listening to this, do not think that all of them are. We are going to move north. Okay. But the third one would be the Central Highlands in Kenya. So an area between Meru and Naivasha. So that area is a high altitude. So Kenya, if you think geographically, is close to the equator. And this area is a higher altitude. It has it's below Mount Kenya, which was, I don't know, millions of years ago, volcanic. And the soil is incredibly rich there. And it's like a breadbasket area. Higher altitude is important because it means that it's a temperate climate. So if you were lower altitude at that latitude, it would be uncomfortably hot and harsh climate, but because it's higher altitude, it's temperate and incredibly rich soil. So lots. I mean, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's like something like up to 80%. I hope somebody can correct me on this. It's like 80. It's like between 75 and 90% of all of the flowers that are distributed around the world, the global flower market that goes through the Netherlands, that's the hub for where flowers are traded, up to like 80% come from that area in Kenya.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Wow, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's
we have some
literally
tulips
like
over here. I wonder if we're looking at tulips from...
No, the tulips would be coming from
that would
Netherlands.
Be Netherlands.
They definitely got the trademark on that one.
That makes sense. Yeah. What was I thinking? Yeah. As a matter of fact, I bought wooden tulips for my kids when I was there. So
yeah, there you
I got so excited to think my flowers were from Kenya. I got carried away. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry, tulips.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful coffee growing region, tea, and then flowers.
Nice.
And it is incredibly fertile and it's verdant, and there are wonderful protected wilderness areas, so some beautiful national parks, but also conservancies, so private reserves. But
this is one of the places
access.
You've been, right?
Yes, I actually have been there quite a few times. I mean, I've been to Kenya several times in my life, but this is one of my favorite areas.
But what is the vibe like the cultural vibe?
It is so colorful and welcoming and friendly and highly educated. Kenya is a highly educated country, strong democracy. I would say incredibly warm, proud, welcoming people. And Kenyans, every Kenyan I've ever known is got not one, but like several projects on the go, jobs, projects, side hustles. Like Kenyans are the absolute entrepreneurs to the T. Mm-hmm. So much innovation going on in Kenya. And
is it expensive?
No, super affordable. I mean, really affordable. One thing about New Zealand is that it's a more, if you're coming from elsewhere in the global south, a very expensive country to be in. Both Western Cape of South Africa and Kenya, very affordable. If you're a digital nomad, those are two fantastic places to be based. Kenya, and so this area, having Mount Kenya right there, great for hiking, for fly fishing, for, mountain biking, amazing for that, and beautiful. So Naivasha is a big lake, so great for water activities, and amazing, fresh, clean, super clean air. A great wellness spot.
Oh my gosh, put me on a plane right now.
Yeah, no,
it's a
beautiful place.
I can see why you're good at your business. It's like you're selling me right here. I'm like, all right. You're like, all right, Jason, listen. I'm going to put a package together for you right now. No, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're on to number 4, which is Tasmania. So I don't know if you've ever been to Tasmania, the island of Tasmania. No. So it's known to have the cleanest air in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I thought the air is nice and clean here.
It's very clean in Norway, yes. But yeah, that's one of the and also 40% of Tasmania is national parks. The biggest town, I think it's officially a city, is Hobart, but it's super slow paced. And it is more affordable than mainland Australia. It is known as like an outdoor lover's mecca. It's got a colder climate than I think a lot of Australia because it's an island and it's the South Seas, but it is not like an inhospitably so. And it doesn't like here get completely frozen so you can't grow produce over the winter seasons. It's still year-round produce. Yeah, it's a super laid-back, friendly and quite international like community there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good internet?
Yeah, very good internet.
That's
good
important
question.
For the nomads.
That's very important. And all of the places so far, yes. It wasn't one of my criteria, but maybe I can look at my list and there's 1 or 2 places that I've chosen that don't probably meet the good internet thing. But Tasmania does, and so do the other 3 for sure. Excellent internet. Yeah.
Do you love that about your job, with the part where you are finally off the computer and you've got a group of people and you're interacting and you're in a beautiful place and you're doing the thing?
Yeah.
Because
it's the best.
This is the struggle with the modern day business. I should say it's also a gift to live, for example, me living in Norway and being able to have a business and come here with a business originally built in. I was thinking about this the other day. Back in the day, it'd be so much more complicated to move around the world and to take your job with you. Now we can do that, but also comes with a
price. Yeah.
Screen time price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. And
any way you cut it, you could try, obviously businesses vary, but
yeah,
you have to put in the screen time to do.
So usually when I meet people and they say, "Oh, what do you do?" and I explain, and then they kind of they're like, "Oh, wow, like, oh, that sounds absolutely ideal. You must just be like on holiday year round."
Well, what is your? Just tell everybody what you do, so we know, and they can listen to the other podcasts because you have tons of advice about retreats and stuff. But just give everybody the elevator pitch on what you do.
The elevator pitch. So I run a business that curates retreats and adventure holidays in exceptional destinations around the world, and it's all about inspiring wonder. So bringing to you a place of connectedness with the environment that you're in, bringing you into beautiful nature and making you feel aligned and just open to that very special chemical rush of awe, appreciation, connection. And all of my trips are around those moments, bringing people to feel that.
Yeah.
And so it's group retreats and also curated solo or private group journeys.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll link to it all. And you're so eloquent in your descriptions.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's no wonder when somebody hears that, as you said, going back to where we started, that they're like, wow, you're living the dream.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, you're just on holiday the whole year. And actually, I spend so much time behind my computer. But to your point, that there are those moments when you're on a trip and it's okay, it's happening. And if I'm leading the trip and then it's screen, then you can't be on the screen. And everybody on the trip has also put aside their mobile phones. I don't ever there's no trip. I'm not like a rule person. So there's no trips where it's like phones away or like hand your phone in at the door, but a lot of them are in beautiful wilderness and people are encouraged to kind of like leave the phone, you know. Mm-hmm. And it is amazing what happens in the chemistry of group when you're sitting around a table together and no one has their mobile phone with them on the table.
Norwegians are very good about that, I'd say, overall, too. Yeah. You go to a concert here, for example, you don't see a bunch of people holding up their phones and doing
No, it's absolutely right. And I think it's because Norway is like very proudly privileges time away from work. Like when people are like, okay, my work ends and here it's quite early, like 4 o'clock or whatever. It's like
out of there.
You're out of there.
Yeah.
You're staying a minute longer, and it's not cool to be emailing your employees or your boss at 9 p.m. at night.
That's the thing. Yeah, culturally, it's not
Culturally,
cool.
it's not cool.
I don't know much about that because I have not worked for a
Yes.
Norwegian company.
Yeah,
but
I don't
I think
either.
that's great.
Yeah. My husband says like it's amazing. Like
It's a faux pas. Almost.
Exactly. If he's like there after 2 minutes after 5, people are like, "What are you still doing here?"
Yeah.
You know, like go home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, yes, all right.
Okay.
That part's nice. Well, I mean, I can relate, this getting to sit here with you in person and just have a chat. I wish I could do this kind of thing all day without the computer part of it.
Yeah.
The computer part's nice sometimes. You got to take care of stuff.
It's
and
an
you can just-
enabler, but it's not the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to think about, at least for me, is speaking of health and wellness, when thinking about building a business for anybody listening, I feel like, you want to think about the lifestyle first. I've talked about this before. If you can design it in a way where you can prioritize the lifestyle component, doesn't mean you're not going to end up having screen time and stuff like that. But you can be more intentional about building systems and building things in a way that supports the lifestyle instead of just kind of going along with the, an example for me in my personal life is I just stopped recording podcasts at night. I was too tired. I didn't feel like, even though there's the big time change and it's hard, but sometimes, so I get emails from really nice people, or there's guests I want to have on. They're based in California, and I'm just like, unless you want to get up early, I just can't do it. Or if next time you travel to the East Coast or, over to Europe, hit me up.
Yeah.
I just have to say no.
Yeah.
And that's just you have to draw the line for the
sure.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because it's just not sustainable. It wasn't sustainable for me. It wasn't good for me, for my family.
Yeah.
Just on the health and wellness topic,
For sure.
I know we're going to meandering off from the destinations, but these are things to think about too as you hear this list, because you might want to consider time zones. And I talked to a couple that didn't take time zones into too much consideration. They thought about it, but they were just like, we can do it, when they went off to Chiang Mai, Thailand. And it's their first time, trying the digital nomad thing. And meanwhile, they're starting their workday at like midnight.
Terrible.
Because,
Yeah.
this
You
is
do.
part of your daily life. So,
yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to the question, like if you're, because I think what we're really talking about is what makes us healthy, what makes us flourishing. And I think it's an important question to ask yourself, like, what do I need? Somewhere time, is part of that. Time away from pressure, time away from work, but time to do the things that you love, time to be active, time to connect, time to sleep. It's definitely a big part of this. It's also why in the criteria, big urban centers can never be wellness destinations, just because time operates in a city in a very different way. Paul Auster, I don't know, either author, Paul Auster is an American author, and he writes most amazing short stories and novellas based in New York, and one of his biggest themes is time.
Really?
Yeah. And
what's the author's name?
Paul Auster.
Oh, okay. Oh.
It's kind of like a post-detective sort of novels where what you assume, and now we're getting like a bit off the track, but what you assume to happen, like that everything will sort itself out, like a story, right? You start a story and you're like assume that the baddie's going to be caught and the detective will bring order to things, and but he kind of flips that on its head, and
Really?
everything is flipped on its head. And it's part of that is because it's always set in New York, and New York is of course one of the most iconic mega cities.
Yeah.
And the point being that time operates in a totally different way there, and it's not rational, and things don't come to a clean conclusion. And that's just part of what it means to be in an urban space.
Yeah.
And it's very
Embracing
dislocating.
the chaos.
Chaos, exactly. And some people do thrive in that, and incredible things can be created and from that. But it's also, I think personally, an environment that you need a break from. And I would say an environment that's not conducive to overall well-being.
Yeah. To each his own, of course.
Of course,
people
exactly.
Thrive in cities, but
definitely,
even if you thrive in cities, you still know at the heart of it that
there's a pace to things that is almost untenable. It's almost like things, I think, like technology moves at a much faster rate that the human mind can keep up with, and a movement can keep up with. There's almost like an existential anxiety that comes with living in a big mega city.
Yeah.
You just can't keep up.
Yeah.
And that's inspiring and cool, and enables innovation and indeed thriving in some ways. But I think personally that you'd need a balance or a break from that to stay healthy.
What do you think about we say community, but you could also, if you want to, talk about it as a collective consciousness. Is that something that you've thought about?
In terms in the list or in general?
Let's say in a destination, right? You're talking about being in a New York City where, you've got, just to go on a metaphysical level, let's say. Is that something that you think influences the daily attitudes, behaviors?
I think ultimately we're social animals, and we are responding to and in synthesis with our other species around us. I think it's not far-fetched to say that that you are part of the context that you're in, and that you respond to and are affected by the society that you're in, for sure. And on the consciousness level, it is not surprising that places that I've mentioned attract a person that's looking or prioritizing a certain type of thing. And there is kind of like a consciousness that proliferates from those areas, a shared understanding, a shared sense of priorities. Because we're social animals, I would say that it is part of well-being. I am an introvert at heart, and I sometimes have these like big yearnings to just like be in a cabin and like no other human for like miles and miles. But I know that ultimately, back to the point of what wellness is and what helps us to flourish, you do need a community in some sense. And for everybody that might be slightly different. Maybe some people only need a very small community and some larger, but I think no man is an island.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, podcasting is all about tangents, if you want to call it that. But this is good because I think it ties in with exactly what we're talking about. And these are some things to consider.
Yeah. Okay.
Where are we at?
No, we're at number 5.
Okay.
So I would say
you're in charge of this podcast, by the way. You just tell me where we're at and we're rolling with
it. I would say the west coast of Costa Rica. So Costa Rica is, of course, famous. Yeah.
Now you're speaking my language.
It's famous for that, and maybe slightly iconic, maybe a little overtraded term of Pura Vida. But I would point out that Costa Rica is, in terms of Central America, the most stable and democratic country. It also runs on 99% renewable energy. How amazing is that?
It? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a pioneer in ecotourism. So Costa Rica is really one of the first places, with in terms of crafting the concept of ecotourism.
Right. Being intentional about it right from the get-go.
Exactly.
It would have been nice if other places were following suit back then, because the infrastructure being built over many years and now coming into generations is important to support that.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's a long-term investment because real ecotourism speaks, it's community as well as environment.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen overnight.
Any specific towns or?
I tried to look into that, but I actually think, I mean, obviously not in the capital, but so much of Costa Rica meets this. I kept on looking. Costa Rica also has very, very high quality water, and most places in Central America don't. Yeah.
I haven't been there for so many years. So many years ago I was there, but I loved it. And I know it's gotten more expensive, and now people say it's comparable to the cost of the U.S. and everything like that. So it's not one of those destinations if you're thinking about, if you want, from my experience, if you want like more inexpensive version of Costa Rica that's a little bit earlier on in the timeline, you could say Nicaragua or something like that. Yeah, which I've been to, and it's I can see that parallel, or when
more
people mention
recently
that.
stable in terms of politically, but
yeah. It's funny because at least once, and it just happened a couple weeks ago as we're recording this. There's some ice on the ground, and I almost fell, as I always do at least once a year, pretty bad. And after several slips, it always builds up, Nina, and then I get to a point where I bust open and I say the same sentence every year. That's it. We're moving to Costa Rica. If I fall and seriously hurt myself, we're moving to Costa Rica. And I go on this rant. I had to kind of explain to my kids afterwards, because I'm like, guys, I'm not going to take you away with your friends and everything. Like, we would talk before we do anything like that. But it always builds up, the Norwegian winter.
Yeah.
And then I have this, this freak out. And it's always the Costa Rica. That's where
right.
it just comes out of my mouth. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because it was a very nice place to be.
Yeah, it is.
It is nice here, but you think about warmth. And,
year round, and the produce.
Surfing,
it's an epic
eggs and
wellness
beans and
lifestyle
nice
destination
after
but
it's surf session. Sorry, I'm
brilliant.
just
No, absolutely. And I think more and more people there on that same wavelength. And so there's the community vibe, but everything is on a timeline, and it's important that you bring that up about Nicaragua and just about places becoming overtraded. And I was careful of that with adding this to the list. It isn't yet spoiled. It's a big enough country, wild enough that there are it's
there are definitely places. You can
totally.
go that,
but everything does. Yeah, there's a lot of humans.
Yeah.
On this planet. So
I met a guy that lived in a cave down in Costa Rica at the time. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a cave dweller.
And he was just living.
I talked to him. He was just living in this cave, and he had I wish I had a journal at this point, because I would have loved to detail this conversation. But I think he said he had a family too and everything, but he's not always with them. He lives part of his life in this cave, and he was just this interesting guy because he was just all the way down. You have to hike some miles down this beach. It was near the town of Montezuma at the time, which wasn't as developed as it probably is now.
Now, yeah.
He was a cave dweller, and he seemed, had that cave dwelling type of wisdom. In his
you say
eye,
aroma. That cave
you never know who you're going to meet.
It's so interesting because in Zimbabwe, there is a term. So I'm sure you've heard, times politically have been pretty unstable in Zimbabwe for a little while, and the economy has crashed in the 2000s certainly. And anyway, there were plenty of people, I'm not going to go into the details, who kind of it wasn't viable for them to live in Harare, in the center, in the cities. And part of it is access to food and so on. And so there were quite a lot of people who would kind of move out into the countryside, and not on a romantic, bucolic, sense, but kind of for survival. And there's this lovely term that Zimbabweans, because they are, doggedly optimistic and positive. And there's the euphemism for that. In Zimbabwe is he was living with nature. Mm-hmm. So where's John? Well, he's been living with nature. Which is what I thought when you said the guy in the cave. I was like, what's his story?
That's interesting. He was living with nature.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So then number 6, and this is where I'm going to ask you to help me, because I have actually not been there.
Okay.
So
can I take a guess?
Yeah.
Are you throwing out Colorado?
I wasn't actually throwing up Colorado,
okay.
But it is in the US. I wasn't. The reason why I consider Colorado, but it's a pretty harsh climate, and my understanding is it's not year-round local produce.
Well, I mean, there is everywhere because they,
fly it in.
Yeah, but we have year-round local produce here in Norway, but
I mean,
I would put it on the list, Colorado, just because I lived there and I love
so
it. I moved there for the lifestyle, and it was a fantastic lifestyle. It's changed a lot, but there's still places you can go in Colorado and just live a fantastic lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay, so that should have been on the list. That's
going to be your bonus one.
That will be a bonus one.
Okay.
I did think of Northern California towards Portland.
Yeah.
Even into Oregon.
It is gorgeous, serene. nature-filled.
Not accessible in an economic sense, I think.
No, but then again, it's hard for me to know because I think, if you're away from the coast
Yeah.
and you go in just a bit,
It's a
you
different...
can probably find some small towns and things like that that you could live in. But no doubt about it, the vibes there are exactly what you're describing in your criteria. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Found a lot of peace in my times going through that area.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say it's a
Great climate.
It's a great inclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super. Great. And so now we're up to number 7 on the list, which is in Portugal. I'm probably not going to pronounce this. There are 3 areas that I thought of. So all of relatively close to Lisbon, but not in Lisbon because it's mega city, but Sintra to Ericeira, that kind of area, and Alentejo, which is where the cork is from.
Okay.
Yeah, and that whole area. There's a lot of like sustainable farm and
Portugal's
agriculture.
so hot right now.
It's very hot.
Portugal's so hot right now.
Yeah,
Have you
it
seen
is.
Zoolander?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a terrible Zoolander reference. But
Because the thing is, when looking
it is,
at
though.
Europe,
So many people.
Yeah,
moving
so many people going there. So, but those areas and outside of Lisbon, I mean, they do still have a kind of authentic, unspoiled a way to them. And I feel like Portuguese tourism is still at the stage where tourists are loved and welcomed. Whereas when a place becomes overtraded, that changes and there's a resentment towards them. Now, a lot of Europe is already overtraded. So places, I mean, I adore Italy. I adore Sicily. But they are completely overtraded with tourism,
I think parts of Portugal are starting to get a little bit
like that.
backlash because of the real estate prices going up so
yes,
dramatically.
I've heard that,
and
particularly
things like that.
in Lisbon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But you're right. If you're getting... we went to... Baleal and Penache, was it? I can't remember. Some area that was just an hour and a half, maybe, north of Lisbon, and it was great. Great place to spend a week.
Right. Yeah.
So I think you're right. Just getting out of the city.
Good climate as well year round. But I when naming that, I sort of thought to myself, well, there's also parts of northern Spain in the Basque region that maybe fit this as well. Southern Spain is very overtraded and more populated, but there are parts of northern Spain that are very similar. And it speaks to the fact that Europe is, in fact, geographically a very small, I guess, area. And there are pockets that do fit these criteria, that deliver a wonderful lifestyle.
Have you been to Tenerife? I know it's an island.
I haven't been to Tenerife, no.
Because I talked to somebody recently, and that was one of the places where they were like, we could totally live here.
Oh, fantastic.
But in the north side of the island, I guess, away from the resort area.
Okay, yes, because it is quite famous for like big resorts,
yeah, it's one of those places where Norwegians would fly to get away from the winter.
And stay in like
direct
a high-rise
flights
hotel.
to some of these places, so because they know people need to get out.
It's like, Mallorca is one of those places. Yeah. Such a surprising island. Yeah. I mean, obviously Palma is like so overtraded with tourism, lots of big hotels. But the north of the island is so beautiful and wild. And fantastic hiking. And certainly not a new destination by any means, and connect like immediate flights, many European centers. But still, the north is like wild.
North of Palmas and
the north of Mallorca, north of the island.
Okay,
in the northern part, not north of Palma. I mean, look, it's a small island.
I experienced both of that because we stayed in a place with our kids when I was business partner at the time, but then we rented a car and drove, and it was a quite beautiful island. You get away and out of the tourist area.
Absolutely, and the same with Corsica. So the south of Corsica is famous for French like a package holiday. Yeah. But the north of the island is magnificent and very rugged and undertraded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like rugged.
Yeah. And
rugged
also
apparently
Corsica was the pioneer in one of the pioneer countries of organic wine vineyards, wine cultivation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's what they claim anyway.
All right.
Yeah. So then I wanted to throw in another, we're on 8. Yes. And so I this was a toss up. So the first area I thought of was actually, this sort of Swiss-Italian border, Aosta Valley, which I've hiked in quite extensively towards Ticino, which is just on the Swiss side. Now, Switzerland in general has an ideal lifestyle and is one of those destinations that would come up if we were doing like the top 10 spas in the world,
right.
So it's not part, and it's not accessible financially to many, to most people to just settle down in Switzerland. It's also very hard to get a visa or, to be access to it. So on the whole, wouldn't meet that, but it does have an incredible high standard of life. And in the valleys of Switzerland, year-round, incredibly high-quality produce, a lot of it organic and has been for a long time. But the Italian part of Switzerland is not nearly as well trodden by tourists, is very surprising and is much more affordable, and particularly over the border, of course, as soon as you get into Italy. And that whole area is totally magnificent, and it's like the bucolic dream. I almost feel like, the alive with the sound of music is you can't get that in the German and Swiss, and French cantons in Switzerland really anymore. It has been spoiled really by a lot of tourism, but you do get that in the north of Italy, in the Italian Alps. And on the border of Italy, and it's very, very beautiful, amazing climate, and then some of that classic alpine air and water, which is so famous for wellness.
Love it.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah,
take me there. Taking me there right now. Here we go again. She's going to sell like 3 packages to me today. All right.
Okay. So then moving on from there, the last 2, and of course this is not an exhaustive list. As I said, I'm sure there's places being left out, one of which is Colorado. So the next one is Bhutan.
Ooh.
So
don't you have to pay like $300 a day to be there or something?
No, so I think that's a misconception. The way it works is, look, it's not like a backpacker, like shoestring destination. No, it's not like going to Thailand or something. But the way it works is, in order to protect, because Bhutan is like 85% of Bhutan is like national park, like protected wilderness area, and it's the only country in the world that is, I must get the term right, basically the only country in the world where more oxygen is put into the air. Like, it has so many trees. There's a term for it. It's like it's not carbon neutral. It's like more oxygen. It's like they put more oxygen.
Okay.
Yeah. The only country in the world, and where they
carbon positive.
Or carbon
positive. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Carbon negative, wouldn't it be that? Less carbon.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
In order to keep those wilderness areas pristine, and in order to not have Bhutan completely spoiled by tourism, like lots of Nepal is now already, and the Himalayas, it's tragic what's happening around Annapurna and in parts of Nepal. And in order to ensure that doesn't happen, what the Bhutanese government have done is made it mandatory that when you come as a tourist to Bhutan, that you have a local guide, and you can't just book accommodation like booking.com, like, here I'm going, I've got my trip. It has to be through the guide, and there's a minimum amount in which you can pay per day for your food and accommodation. And it's not, when you consider it's a guide, food and accommodation all in one, it's compared to European countries, is actually not very much. Of course, you can pay over that. There are some 5-star resorts now in Bhutan, One is in the National Geographic's list of the 100 most extreme hotels in the world. It's totally insanely beautiful, and it's very expensive. And so you pay way over that, but you can't pay under that. So it is an exclusive model of tourism. The other country in the world that does that is Botswana, which could have also been on this list.
Okay.
Botswana's got the same kind of it's basically governmental level policies to ensure that the national heritage of wilderness and beauty is not ruined by overtraded and unregulated tourism.
Yeah, okay.
And so there is something, I guess, prohibitive and maybe slightly classist about that. But at the end of the day, what it's saying is that this natural beauty is it's a national resource, and as the government, it is our duty to ensure that it doesn't get ruined.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. I mean, to hear that is it's important to understand where a program like that is coming from and why they instituted it.
Yeah,
because that can change your feeling about paying for that.
Sure.
Privilege to go in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One thing I would...
But it's not a play. Yeah, I guess, but because of the daily minimums, it's not again, it may not be affordable to spend like a month there.
Yes, that's true.
Unless there's some workarounds. I don't know.
Yes. And also one of the downsides, I've not investigated this, but I don't think it's like in the way that Portugal is an easy place to be like a digital nomad and like, but it is certainly ideal in terms of, wellness indices. It is incredible nature and protected nature, and I think that a lot of governments around the world could. I'm not saying that what they're doing is the perfect model, but it has to. That's the way we have to go. And if we're going to protect wilderness, if we're going to protect our green spaces, there has to be some on a governmental level, some intervention. It has to be
systemic.
It has to be.
Yeah.
It has to be. Look what's happening in the Amazon, for example. Why is, governments there need to step in, and that's not just from a tourism perspective, of course, that's also from logging and palm plantations and so on. But the point is government needs to stand up in terms of protecting wilderness.
I love the inclusion on the list too, because somebody might be listening, and although that might be more of a challenging one to spend quality time or to move to, you never know. And I've known people that have met somebody that worked at a hotel there for a long time. Like maybe somebody's listening and like, oh, Bhutan, no, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, if they dive in, maybe they end up at Bhutan next year. You never know.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's on the list.
Great. And if you love mountains, you're gonna love Bhutan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The mountain kingdom. And then the number 10 one is suburbs, areas around Kyoto in Japan.
Oh, okay. They just came out with a digital nomad visa.
Oh, did they? I didn't know that.
6 months.
Okay. There you go.
If you fit the bill. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, because it is a very expensive place.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But there are small villages outside Kyoto that are comparatively a lot less. I mean, I think the high cost of living indices from Japan are speaking to, Osaka, Tokyo, like downtown central city prices, whereas like anywhere, smaller villages and suburbs are more affordable. Kyoto is known as the tranquility and peace capital.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's the home of forest bathing. So the practice, I'm sure you've heard of.
I have, but share, maybe somebody listening.
It's basically there have been scientific studies into the effect on our nervous system when we're in forests, when we're surrounded by trees. And there's something about the vibrations and the greenness, the sounds that have an effect physically on our bodies and on our nervous systems when we're in the forest. And the idea is that if you are struggling with your mental health or an anxious person or fatigued, that you go into the forest, and it's a therapy because it completely
just be in the forest.
Yeah, exactly.
Take a bath.
Exactly. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what you need to counteract the negative effects of cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And that happens to us when we're in forests.
I have fortunate to have a forest right out my front door, and I do take a bath in it, a visual bath in it every morning. And I'm often near it, and it is, to me, was a big part of this, and it's a huge part of my everyday life, just to see trees like this and be near them. It might sound hippy dippy, but I'm sorry, it's the truth.
Oh, totally, absolutely. And you've literally, I'm looking out Jason's window, and there's literally a Norwegian forest outside the kitchen window. And now the sun's just come out, sparkling on the snow.
The light changes, you see at different times of day. It's special.
Yeah.
And trees I'm reading a book on trees, and it's incredible how trees communicate with each other, and all of the things that are going on that we don't even understand fully or know. We think we know so much, but then you just take one species and you realize you don't know anything.
And they've been around so much longer than us on this planet. Yeah, in their communities. There's the book Overstory. I've seen it. It's by Powers. What's his first name? An author. His surname is Powers. Somebody will be like, because it was a very popular book. I think 2 years ago it was released. And anyway, so it's all about this. It's a story. It's set in the US, and it delves into a lot. It's a human story, so it's easy to follow on a narrative sense, but it delves into a lot about the science behind how trees communicate and build communities and support each other.
They will warn each other if one of them's getting eaten by an invasive insect. Let's say they will send out a chemical thing through the root system to let the others know, hey, this thing is here, put your guard up. And so the other trees know to put a certain chemical into their bark to repel these. I mean, it's just incredible what they'll do.
Amazing.
And I mean, that's you could do a whole multi-year podcast on trees. But,
absolutely.
That's not this one. But what an incredible list.
Yeah.
Where are you moving? That's the $1 million question now. Which one of these are you going to?
To be honest, can I go to a few of them? Can I spend a couple of years in a few?
Because you guys are moving to, you can, of course, but it sounds like you might want to move somewhere where you can set up your business and everything.
Yes, exactly.
One of these places.
One of the criteria for me that's not on this list, but it is for me, is I need to be close to a well-connected airport.
Yeah, okay.
Close enough. I don't know if you obviously want or not. I do not want to be next door to one, but close to one. Yeah. Because otherwise,
within
all the
an hour and a half.
Within an hour and a half. Yeah. Because otherwise, that just
for your business. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because you're leading a lot of these trips, but
yes, or going to check out new, plan new trips or whatever.
Living the dream.
That's it.
You are living the dream. All right. Yeah. I mean, remind people. InRetreat.co. We'll link to it all. That's where they can find all your offerings and everything.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share here?
No, just that I guess one of the things I'm focusing on this year is, some people love a retreat vibe, a group holiday vibe, but also lots of people don't. And as I mentioned on this chat, Jason, I actually am an introvert, and I get that, and I get energy from being alone, and so I am responding to that and responding to how many people have said, it gives me anxiety to consider spending a whole holiday with a group of strangers. But I do want to invest in a retreat for myself. Like I want to go through that. I want to experience that. And so this is something I'm really focusing on this year is an offshoot of InRetreat, which is called In Solitude, which is all about enabling people to do solo retreats, solo journeys, or with a select private group, your best mates or your partner or whatever. And so accessing all of the amazing destinations that I've invested in so many years finding and scouting and built a relationship with, so you can access those destinations and have the structure of a retreat and the activities and the things that make it a retreat and special, but it's just you. It's not, and access. So that's I think I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, amazing. Well, people can go to your website and sign up for all the goodies if they want to learn more about that and you. And I love recording these podcasts with you.
I enjoyed it so much. I had so much fun making up this list. Honestly, it was like I did a little travel. Just coming up with the list, like it was, I guess it's like watching a cooking show, you almost feel like you were part of the culinary journry.
I feel like we've been on a bit of a journey today too. And that's what I love about recording this podcast and travel. It's just like, it is important too. If you're not, I don't travel as much as I used to, but I get to get that buzz and that vibe just by talking about it. It's really fun. And that's cool. It's so fun to be around and to just talk about different places to visit.
Well, I think that's a very infectious energy that you bring to your podcast, which is why people love it so much.
Thank you. You want to leave us with a proverb or a word of wisdom? Or
oh, wow. I guess
a joke. Whatever.
Joke.
Anything, whatever.
No, I'm not very good.
This is your chance. You don't have to take it. We can close it out.
Well, I guess what I just say is that just encourage everyone to take a moment to ask themselves, what makes me flourish, and to, with courage and patience, work towards getting that in your life, more of that. Because the more people that are flourishing for themselves on their own terms, the better it is for everyone.
Yeah, that is so nice. What a great way to end it. And flourishing is not a word I use very often, but I should. I like that. What makes you flourish?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can interpret that in so many ways. So love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
It was a blast. Let's high five it out.
Woo!
Yeah. Take care.
Ciao.
There you have it. Loved that episode. Thank you to Nina for not only taking the time to come up and record this, but also for just really thinking through the list and bringing some incredible content to us today. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I'm going to leave you with a quote in a second. First, I do want to pull out a question that Nina shared up at the top of the episode, which is part of the criteria she set for this list. And the question was, what are the things that help you flourish on a deep level in life? Wow, what a powerful question. What are the things that help you flourish? I love that word, on a deep level. I think those are the two key words there, flourish and on a deep level, not just on a surface level, because it's great to go to a spa and chill out, but after the sort of the spa day wears off, maybe that's just surface level. I don't know. That's part of self-care, but as she mentioned, it's much deeper than that. So that's a question that you can ask yourself right now, no matter where you are, even if you're not traveling for the next 5 years. What are the things that help you flourish on a deep level right now? And I think we tend to forget because we see ourselves every day. We know ourselves, and it's easy to kind of think we're not changing that much, but change slowly happens over time. And I think it's great to check in with yourself with these types of questions to kind of see where you're at now. Perhaps the things that allowed you to flourish on a deep level before have changed. Your interests have changed. Maybe your relationships have changed. And maybe the answer to that question is different than it would have been, probably different than it would have been 5 years ago, maybe even a year ago, maybe even a week ago. Who knows? So I just wanted to highlight that before we jump out of here. And I am going to pull a quote out of the quote drawer, the good old-fashioned quote drawer. Here we go. This one from... Have I read this one? I don't know. Sometimes the quotes recycle themselves into the quote drawer. I try to take them out when I use them. This one might have snuck back in. Let's see. All right, we'll pull this one instead. Swami Sivananda, who said, "The harder the struggle, the more glorious the triumph. Self-realization demands very great struggle." Well, I hope not too much struggle, but maybe a little bit of struggle is okay. All right, leave you with one more. Maybe I've read it before, but I like it. Paramahansa Yogananda, who said, "The season of failure is the best time for sowing the seeds of success." Bam! We're out of here. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.